Hiya, my banner ID is B00236295. Today the topic I'll be discussing is World Youth, and the two events I'll be discussing are Hajj and the Kumbh Mela. These two events are religious events which are one of the largest in the world. The Kumbh Mela is a Hindu festival and Hajj is an Islamic festival. The Kumbh Mela is a religious Hindu festival that is celebrated every 14 years. The religious pilgrim is completed successfully after going to 4 individual rivers which are located in Haridwar, which is the Ganga River, Ujjain, which is the Shipra, Nasik, which is the Godavari River, and Prayag, which is in Allahabad on the Jamuna and the mythical Saraswati River. The procedure to the religious pilgrim is actually cited through horoscopic positions of the Sun, Moon and Jupiter. Through the horoscopic readings, there's actually a blessed time that is actually given, and once that time arrives, the Hindus that are actually away to do this pilgrim are required to bath in the 4 rivers, which I've actually obviously mentioned earlier on. The 4 sacred times are obviously going to be separate as well, and once all 4 baths are completed, it is believed that all their sins are forgiven and they are basically starting a new beginning. And the Kumbh Mela bath is believed to be so powerful that Hindus are actually not required to bath for a few weeks or a few months after doing the Kumbh Mela bath. They can if they want to, but it's not actually necessary on them for a few months. And the Hajj festival is an Islamic festival. Hajj is actually the 5th pilgrim of Islam. It actually takes place at the last month in the Islamic calendar. The festival of Hajj is actually celebrated in Mecca in Saudi Arabia. Hajj is an obligatory pilgrim that all Muslims should do at least once in their life, only if they are financially stable and physically able to do so, and if they're not physically able to do so, if they have someone that can help them do this, complete this pilgrim. Hajj is actually seen the same way as the Kumbh Mela is. Once the pilgrim of Hajj is completed, it is believed that there is nothing more than the reward of paradise given to them. At least 2 million people come together each year to complete the pilgrim of Hajj. Each year this happens, and for the Kumbh Mela, at least 7 million people come together every 14 years to celebrate that pilgrim. Hajj is completed through a specific prayer which is known as the Hajj prayer, and there's actually a few processes to it. The process to Hajj is actually completing a tawaf, which means going around the Kaaba, which is obviously the Islamic mosque, one of the biggest mosques in Islam, right? I think it's a mosque, yeah. You are required to walk around this 7 times and read any prayers, any wishes you have in your heart. You just let them out while you're walking around this 7 times, and that's known as the tawaf. Once the tawaf is completed, you're required to then go between the mountains of Safa and Marwa. and at the top of these is the surface of Arafah. This is another city, and you are required to pray for God's forgiveness for anything you've done or anything you wish to be asked for forgiveness, or any wishes or anything. Then you're actually required to cast stones at the pillars, which are believed to be where the devil is, and you cast stones towards that, and you would read God is great, basically. And for those people that don't actually complete Hajj that year, on the day that Hajj is actually completed, the celebration of Eid al-Adha is done that day, and that is for those people who do not actually complete the Hajj that year. They celebrate Eid, and they would sacrifice an animal, and they would give that meat out to the less fortunate and the more needy people if they have many around them. And if it's in cities such as the United Kingdom, and there are needy people, yet there are other people out there that you can give it to, you would give it out. So that's just a briefing of both the religious pilgrims. You might feel that I've given a deeper knowledge of Hajj, and that is because I am Muslim, so I have a bit of a deeper knowledge about it. The reason I've actually chosen these two topics these two events to discuss is because they're actually first of all, one of the world's biggest gatherings, and they're both religious gatherings, and their incidents over the years are very, very similar, and their health issues and all the issues, they're quite similar to one another, and the issues they face are the same. So I thought it was I could talk a lot more about it. I'd like to give a few incidents that have taken place within Hajj, which are the incidents that have taken throughout the lifetime are the stampede and the failure of crowd control, the protest and violence that takes place, the diseases that have been spread, and sorry, bear with me, and basically other health issues and control, and sometimes there's obviously been politics being played a part of this as well, and these are the same issues that have occurred with the Kumbh Mela over the years as well. So the first issue I'd like to discuss are the stampedes, and this is actually something that has taken place over and over again between Hajj and the Kumbh Mela. Over the years, I can say that there has been a very big difference between the amount of issues that have occurred with Hajj, because this is an annual event that takes place, so they annually do try to fix it out a little bit better, whereas the Kumbh Mela takes place every 14 years, and they do try to fix it from the previous events, but because there's such a big gap between the times, it can still be a bit uncontrolling. The stampedes are actually taking place because there's so many people going. For Hajj, annually there's 2 million people going each year, and for the Kumbh Mela every 14 years there's 7 million people going, and because people are trampling over each other, walking over each other, it's causing a lot of problems. I had read into quite a few incidents for both, which will be mentioned in my report, about a lot of deaths of young children and women through the stampedes, because they are actually obviously the more weaker ones. The panic that's caused between these times is actually really, really hard, and another thing that was going on, which was in about 2006 to 2010, was pickpocketing in Hajj. I had actually read into this, and at that time I had a few family members actually going to complete the pilgrim, and they had actually experienced it themselves, so I could talk a bit about that. The pickpocketing is basically around their waist. People tend to wear the bag things to keep their money and their personal belongings there because it's so trampled. You can't carry big handbags and all that, so it's these waist pockets. And they were actually knifed out, like they wouldn't harm the person, but they would kind of sneakily cut them off, which I personally think is kind of wrong. You're going to celebrate something, you're going to ask for God's forgiveness, and yet you go around and doing things like that. Another thing that's taken place in November, on 20th of November in 1979, a group of 200 to 500 militants occupied the Grand Mosque were expelled due to the fact that they were causing violence and protest against people that had died. And the riots that were caused, it's quite frustrating to see these things happening. These are things obviously that are really back in the 1990s, obviously, and 80s. And another thing, which is one of the main issues I want to discuss, is the health issues that come with large gatherings such as this in the Kumbh Mela and in Hajj. Recently there's been meetings going on in India, in the main city where the Kumbh Mela takes place at Allahabad. There's been a lot of meetings going on up there to discuss whether it is actually safe for millions of people to be bathing in this sort of water, as can it cause many diseases. How can we prevent people from falling ill, and all these kind of things. Obviously, as the years go on, we are trying to become more advanced and more careful with our health issues, so that is one really big major thing, especially when millions of people are going to be bathing in the one water, the one river. It's not safe, and you don't know what's been thrown in the rivers. Obviously, because these are religious places, they're sacred places, they would be trying to keep them as clean as possible. And in 2014, the health issue that was raised in Hajj was the Ebola scare. The Ebola scare has actually caused a lot of problems. The cities near South Africa, such as Somalia and stuff, were actually banned from coming to Saudi Arabia to complete the pilgrim. I will discuss in more depth in my report what cities there were that weren't allowed in 2014. But it was mostly from the South Africa side, South and West Africa side. People weren't allowed to come because this is where the root of the disease had actually started from, and there was a fear that it would actually spread throughout the pilgrim, so therefore nobody from them ends were allowed to come along. And another thing, it's very, I don't know, it's kind of heartbreaking for somebody to actually hear about that they've saved up so much money and so much time and so much effort, but they can't go due to things like this. It is hard with a lot of people there for the cities to keep control, but they tend to do so. For the stamp deeds in Saudi Arabia, over the years they have actually been building more ramps around the Kaaba. So there's like a bridge that's been built around in a circle, so that you're actually technically doing your tawaf, which is going around the Kaaba 7 times. They've built a specific bridge that wheelchairs can go through, so that they don't actually, it's not crowded on the ground floor, and then there's like another level being built as well, so there's like 3 or 4 levels being built just to do that. And there's been train tracks built to go from one city to another, because you have to go from Mecca to Medina, and to complete your Hajj and your Umrah. So these things have been built. These are things that I've been reading off the news and the internet, and because it's something I follow up every year, that's why I've got a bit more deeper knowledge. I can actually see that they've actually tried to make a lot of changes with the Kumbh Mela as well. In 2013 was the latest Kumbh Mela pilgrim that had taken place, and they actually had built bridges through the river for people to walk through, but unfortunately there was still a stampede scare that did take place, and round about 200 people passed away, and a majority were young children. Reading into this, I had actually seen another problem that goes on within the Kumbh Mela and Hajj, which was elderly people being left behind in the places. People have actually, this is something that's very cultural, that families tend to live together as joint families, and this and that and the next thing. And the younger generation, like sons, daughters and daughter-in-laws, have actually left their adults, the elderly people, such as their mother-in-law, father-in-law, their parents behind. They've just taken them there to leave them there to die, in a sense. I just read into this very recently. I did find it weird, but when I started researching into it more with more trustworthy journals and stuff like that, I do see that it is something that's very true. The main thing I'll be discussing is the health issues, such as the Ebola scare, the dirty water, and the stampedes, and many other things such as this. The solution I'd actually give to this is one solution that's actually been carried out right now within Saudi Arabia and within the Kumbh Mela, is discussing health issues, discussing ways to change the cities about, discussing what's safer for these things to go around. Over the past year, from 2000, you can see from 2010 to 2014, there's been a very big change in Saudi Arabia and the side of Mecca and Medina for the pilgrims specifically. And like I mentioned earlier on, such as the bridges being built, the trains being built to go from one city to another, which were usually in past tense actually buses going, and buses were for more disabled people, and the rest of the people would actually walk, or they'd actually just wait for horses or something like that to come along and get them there. Not exactly horses, but you know what I mean, like carriages and stuff. So the ways I would discuss to actually fix these up are actually listen to the public. It is important to listen to experiences of people that have went for the pilgrims, because people watching can have an opinion, but the people that have actually went through it, they actually know more about it. They can speak about it in more detail. If it's heard out what's going on, it's not just by, oh, there's a problem that's just been created, so now we're going to quickly fix this up, we're going to find a solution. The public should be asked, the people should be asked, how was your experience, what could have been changed, what can be changed, what can't be changed about these changes. Another thing that just popped up in my head was the issue of racial abuse, which has been felt a lot that people that come from the more poorer sides, such as South Africa and stuff, they actually get treated not very well, whereas people that come from places such as the UK and the US, they're like looked up to just because they come from a specific city and they have a specific passport, which is not very fair. And people have actually been turned back just because they come from a specific city, and that's something shocking that shouldn't be going on. Anyway, so my solution and my recommendation to these things would be listen to the public, hear out what's being said, what's being done, give more solutions to it. Yes, I know that they are trying to, but we need to look at more solutions to more facilities. I know there are millions of facilities out there for such big events, but there might be need for some more. Like when you're going for Hajj in the Kumbh Mela, you're actually charged a bomb. Like the prices are so high, like I mean like sky high, right? They're so high. They take food charges, your hotel, everything like that. Obviously that would be, but then over on top of that, there's even more money given in that would kind of cover the security purposes and stuff. For that money, actually use it wisely. And when it comes to racial abuse, you shouldn't be giving it shouldn't be, oh, the people that come from the UK and the US get better hotels, whereas people come from like South Africa and Pakistan and India and stuff like that, they should get like hotels and stuff like that are miles and miles away, and they have to walk so far and stuff like that from the specific places where the events are taking place. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this. Sorry if it's a bit long.